But the truth is, I felt exhausted. I was always tired. Kind of like right before you get sick, you just feel icky and sore and cranky. That's how I was feeling. I was cranky and crabby. And at the end of the day, I remember thinking to myself, if one more person asked me for something, I might just cry. Hey, Impact Maker. I'm Helena, the creator of the Present Teacher podcast. And in each episode, I'm going to help you live the life you are made for through self-care, social-emotional learning, and classroom management. You know that impact you were after when you first started teaching? Well, we're going to make it happen here. I still remember the first year that I experienced mid-year burnout. In fact, it was my first year of teaching. I woke up in the morning dreading going to work. And don't get me wrong, it wasn't because I didn't love my kids, but because I honestly did. But the truth is, I felt exhausted. I was always tired. Kind of like right before you get sick, you just feel icky and sore and cranky. That's how I was feeling. I was cranky and crabby. And at the end of the day, I remember thinking to myself, if one more person asked me for something, I might just cry. And it was around this time of year, my first year of teaching, that I was just waiting for the year to be over. What I didn't realize is what I was experiencing was actually mid-year burnout. And in fact, I am sadly here to report that this wasn't just 1 year. In fact, this happened year after year. And it wasn't until a couple of years that I started to realize that there was a cycle. It was a pattern. But to be honest, the more I went into my wellness journey, the more I found that other teachers experience this too. There are teachers across the world that experience mid-year burnout. But here's the secret. It doesn't have to be that way. You can break the cycle so it doesn't repeat year after year and save yourself time that I wish I would have at the beginning of my teaching career. So if you are feeling extra cranky these days, or you just want to prevent it before it happens, here are 3 signs of burnout and what to do about it. But before we get started, I want to point out what is burnout. According to the American Psychological Association and David Ballard, burnout is an extended period of time where someone experiences exhaustion and a lack of interest in things, resulting in a decline in their job performance. Burnout is the chronic stress over long periods of time. So with that being said, here are the 3 signs of burnout, starting with number 1, which is exhaustion. Now, if you are a teacher, I'm so sorry. I know, especially if you're listening to this as this comes out, that you have heard this song a million times right now, but right now, Encanto is a huge movie that just came out. And in one of the songs in Encanto, it talks about not being able to take anymore. It's the needle that breaks the camel's back, as it says in the song. And you see, when we hear exhaustion, many people think physical. They might think physically tired, maybe physical aching, maybe you've been working out. Either way, this is what many people think of exhaustion. And while, yes, you might be physically exhausted, there are actually many different types of exhaustion you might be feeling, especially as teachers. So to narrow this down, I specifically want to talk about the ones that teachers are more prone to feel like, or more prone to experience, which is emotional exhaustion. Emotional exhaustion is when you tailor to the needs of others and you just feel like you can't take anymore. In the beginning of this podcast episode, I mentioned if one more person asked me one more thing, I might cry. That was an example of emotional exhaustion. Now, you might be thinking, oh my goodness, I felt this too, and thank goodness I'm not alone. But there's also another type of exhaustion, which is mental exhaustion. Mental exhaustion can feel like zoning out, or maybe you just can't make a decision, like decision fatigue. Either way, if you are experiencing any of these things, you might be experiencing exhaustion, which is one of the signs of burnout. With that being said, let's talk about the number 2 sign that you are experiencing burnout, which is not taking care of yourself. All right, let's have some real talk really fast. You know I love you and that I love you enough to tell you the truth. But in general, teachers are, first off, my favorite people to work with. But in general, teachers struggle with this the most. And I say that with love. But teachers spend so much of their energy taking care of others, whether it's their students, their parents, their own kids, their own families. And they often neglect themselves, or they put themselves last on the list. Now, if you notice that you're not taking care of yourself, then you might be experiencing burnout. If things like showering or brushing your teeth or going to the gym seems draining to you, you might be experiencing burnout. And if you notice this and you want to jump back into taking care of yourself, I have a ultimate self-care guide that walks you through 40 ideas of how to take care of yourself in 5 minutes or less. And I will put that in the show notes here, but just wanted to let you know. So if you are finding that you are not taking care of yourself as much as you used to, you might be experiencing burnout. With that being said, the third sign of burnout is a lack of motivation. Now, I'm not talking about just going to work, but I'm specifically talking about lack of motivation in doing the things that used to bring you joy that you no longer do. So this could be things like running, hobbies, wellness, spending time with loved ones. Either way, these are things that you might have once shown a love and a passion for that you are no longer doing, including maybe you lost motivation to do those fun and engaging activities with your kids. Or maybe in your job, you might be dreading going to work like I talked about in the beginning of this podcast. All of these are a sign of burnout. So with that being said, I want to start talking about what to do about it. I talked about the 3 signs of burnout that I often see, or I most likely see in teachers. So now let's talk about what to do about it. Now, quick disclaimer, I am not a licensed counselor or psychologist or anything. So if you need help, please reach out to a licensed professional for help. I will put resources in the show notes for you to reach out if you need those resources. If you noticed, however, I speak from experience and my training, and if you notice that you are getting burned out, here's what I recommend to do based on my studies, my journey, and what I have found to work. And again, I'm not a licensed anything. This is just from my experience. Starting with number 1, which is awareness. The first step to burnout is being aware of where you are in your wellness journey. It's being aware that you are in fact burnt out of your feelings and how your energy level is. So the first step is to notice that you are starting to feel burned out in the first place. We can't fix something unless you start to notice it, right? Well, that's exactly what I'm talking about here. So with that being said, you can do this several ways. You can either just notice within yourself, oh, I'm starting to get, exhausted. Or you can do a reflection of maybe you journal, maybe do a scale 1 to 10, how you're feeling at work. And if you notice a trend, that might be a sign that you're starting to feel burnout. Or maybe you journal about how you're feeling and you start to notice a trend. Either way, it is important to take the space you need to be aware of how you are actually feeling and reflect on how you are feeling. Now, there is absolutely no shame in this. In fact, this is one of the hardest things to admit as teachers, and this is why I'm so passionate about talking about this, because I feel like there's such a stigma around burnout, but I want you to know that this is a safe space. And admitting or reflecting and being mindful and aligned with your body to be able to articulate that you are feeling burnout is the first step. With that being said, step number 2 when it comes to what to do about burnout is to reflect. I want you to ask yourself, what is causing me to feel this way? Now, if you take some time to pause this podcast episode and actually journal, you might notice that there's a couple answers here. But I want you to think, what is causing me to feel this way right now in my life? Could it be something at work, something in your personal life? Just take the time and the space you need to reflect on this and to be honest with yourself. After you ask yourself that question, I want you to ask yourself, what parts of my life feel draining? What parts of my life are zapping my energy, aren't making me feel lightened and excited, but in fact, I feel exhausted and tired after I do? Now, based on those answers, again, feel free to pause this episode if you want to take the time to reflect. But based on those answers, you can do this next step, which is number 3, break down your limiting beliefs by working on your mindset. So I know I threw a big term out there, but limiting beliefs are like the roadblocks in the road getting you from where you want to go. So think of yourself driving a car and you're driving to your most peaceful destination. Maybe you're spending the weekend at a park or camping. And think of these roadblocks, these construction sites that are stopping you from getting you to where you want to go. That's what limiting beliefs are. They are the negative self-talk you tell yourself that stop you from getting to where you want to be. So with that being said, I want you to think to yourself, what are my limiting beliefs? And one of them could be thinking that you're not a good teacher if you don't blank. This is one that, getting personal here, I thought a lot of. I thought I can't be a good teacher unless I stay late and do this, unless I get this activity ready for my kids. Either way, what limiting beliefs, what roadblocks are coming up for you? Another one that I often see with teachers, and I thought was just me, but the more I work with my clients, the more I realize is common, is taking care of myself is selfish. Now I want you to pause and really reflect on this thought you're telling yourself, this inner monologue you're telling yourself. And I want you to ask yourself, is that really true? Is this really how I feel or I want to feel? Is this really how I think? And if I were to tell someone I cared about this out loud, how would that make me feel saying that out loud? So after you've taken time for this, I want you to think, how can I rewrite this thought that I'm having? How can I change the way I'm thinking about this thought in a way that's positive? So for example, instead of thinking taking care of myself is selfish, it's energy that I could spend on others that I'm spending on myself, maybe you could rewrite this and think to yourself when that thought comes up, taking care of myself allows me to take care of those around me in a more meaningful way. See how powerful that is? It's amazing how rewriting the words we tell ourselves can really impact and make a change on our energy. And step number 4, when it comes to taking care of ourselves or to what to do if you're feeling burnout, is to take action. Now, when I say take action, I don't mean go run a 5K. However, if that's what you need, then more power to you. But what I mean by taking action is to ask yourself, what does your body need right now? And this is something that is completely personal and it's going to look different depending on who it is. And that's okay. That's what's beautiful about a wellness journey. It's unique to you. But here are some ideas that you can think of or keep in mind when you are listening to what your body needs. And you feel free to pause and reflect on this a little bit. But maybe one of the things you need to do is to do nothing. Maybe you need to unplug on social. Maybe you need to turn off your notifications. Or maybe you need to unplug from work. Proud coach moment. I actually had one of the Teacher Care Academy members message me telling me that she took the huge step to unplug from work and take time for herself. And I can't tell you how proud I am of her. But taking that break and that extra space when you are feeling burned out is so important. And it can be one of the hardest things to do as a teacher. But I want to encourage you to give yourself permission to take a break without feeling guilty. You are helping yourself feel better so you can show up as your optimal self, so you can take care of you, so you can take care of the ones you love and those in your life. So with that in mind, maybe something else you want to do is figure out your priorities. So maybe the first idea, what your body needs, is to unplug or do nothing. And then the second idea is maybe you want to figure out priorities. Maybe reflect on what is going on and figure out what is in your control and what you can't control. With that being said, I actually have an exercise for you. And if you've worked with me before, you've heard this exercise before, but I want you to get a sticky note out and list all the things that matter to you. Anything from your own health to your family to work. After that, I want you to put it in order. I know that's hard, but first is a brain dump, then put those things in order. And then I want you to pause and reflect and ask, what stuff in my priorities is in my control and what is not? What am I responsible for and what is unrealistic of me to hold myself responsible for? That's such a powerful thing that maybe your body and you are trying to tell yourself that you need right now. Another common idea or thing that most teachers need or some teachers need when they're feeling burned out is to do something that excites you. Give yourself permission to go do something you love without feeling guilty. Go do a hobby, something that lights you up and brings your energy up, and don't look back. If you need some ideas, like I said earlier, I have an ultimate self-care guide that gives you ideas on how to prioritize you in 5 minutes or less, and it has all sorts of ideas, so feel free to check that out. The link will be in the notes. Either way, once you have an awareness of where you are at, that awareness part we talked about, and you have broken down those limiting beliefs, you've reflected, you've broken down that mindset, and you've taken action moving forward, you will find yourself in such a better position. But with that in mind, I wouldn't be a good coach if I didn't tell you this, which is to give yourself some grace and love. It's okay to have your limits. If you are feeling burned out, that's okay. And all things, if you think about it, in the universe have their limits. So of course you're going to. The more you implement this, the easier it is to recognize it in the future. In the future, you're going to be able to recognize years in the upcoming years that, oh my goodness, I'm starting to feel exhausted. I need to start going through this process again. Thank you so much for joining me here at the Present Teacher Podcast. If you love this episode, make sure to subscribe to the newsletter in the show notes to get notified when the next episode of this series comes out. Over the next couple of weeks, I will be talking all about wellness and burnout, and I might even have something super exciting coming up here in a couple of weeks, and you will want to be the first one to be notified, so make sure to get on that list. And remember, as always, that we are stronger together. Take care, and I will see you next time. Thank you so much for listening. If you liked this episode, I would love it if you took a screenshot and tagged me on Instagram at The Present Teacher. Also, make sure to subscribe to get notified each time a new episode comes out. And if you have a minute, leave a review to let me know what you thought. I love hearing from you. Keep dreaming, and remember, we are stronger together.